believe we've actually got to this stage now. Seeing as this is the series where I'm going back and having a look at all the Resident Evil games on the PlayStation 1 console, I've covered the first one, which was brilliant, second one, which was brilliant, and the third one, which was absolutely brilliant too. I suppose it's only right and fitting that we finish this series off properly by having a look at Resident Evil Survivor. Oh god, here we go. Resident Evil Survivor is a single-player off-rail shooter released in March of 2000 for the PlayStation 1 console. Developed by a company called TOS, most notably for developing the Nintendo Game & Watch series, and also such classics as Goal and Muscle, and sadly this game. I'm sure you can see now where this is going. This game was published by Eidos Interactive in the PAL region. A few years after this release they'd be bought and become part of Square Enix Europe. During early development, this game was going by the name of Resident Evil Gun Survivor Behind the Mask. Just kinda rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? It would later be changed to the title we all currently know now, and that is Resident Evil Survivor. Sounds much better than the initial idea they had. It would be the first Resident Evil game in the series to substitute the third-person perspective for the first-person view, and also introduce the light gun to the series. If you were lucky enough to own the Namco gun controller, you would be able to use it to play this game, but I can't remember it being that great when I did back in the day. As they were close to finishing the game, they would have to make a last-minute alteration to the American release. Due to, at the time, recent events with the Columbine Massacre, they chose to take this feature away from players, seen as games at the time were being blamed for what happened on that tragic day. The gameplay is something I wish to never go through again. Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's pretty shitty if I'm honest. I must say I didn't use the Namco gun for this playthrough. I did when I was younger though, and I remember I found it awkward. It wasn't like the games I knew and loved from back then, with the likes of House of the Dead in the arcade, or Time Crisis in the comfort of your own home. You see, those were on-rail shooters. Resident Evil Survivor is more off-rail, meaning you choose your destination and direction where you want to go, and for me when I was younger, doing that with a gun was pretty bad, and that is terrible because at a young age you're not usually fussy, but with this, I was. Something that could have been absolutely amazing wasn't. When I did play this back in the day, I remember having it on for a bit, turning it off and putting Time Crisis on instead. Always a much more enjoyable experience for me. Anyways, that was then, this is now, so let's get into it. Seeing as I'm using the controller, you use the D-pad for directions. Pressing the square button while holding down a directional button will make the player run. But what was supposed to be the most exciting part of this game being the shooting is soon where you'll find it was its downfall. When you're in an area where there are enemies, if you hold down the R1 button you'll go into some sort of shooting stance mode. A cursor will pop up on the screen and you have to manually press with the D-pad where to shoot. It doesn't feel natural at all and awfully stiff. I remember even when using the gun when I was younger, it was still kinda the same. Sure, you had to push a button on the side of the gun to go into the stance mode and fire, but even with the gun it was still pish. It was absolutely awkward as hell if enemies like dogs were on screen that run about erratically. Just look for yourself. The hit detection is a lot of bollocks too. Seems like no matter where you hit an enemy it has the exact same effect. Like you'd think if you were to shoot a zombie in the head they'd go down quicker. I mean that's what we've always been told.
Shoot it, man. Shoot it, man. Shoot it in the head.
But if you shoot the same amount at their head as you do with their legs, they'll still go down the same. Gameplay isn't the only thing they drop their standards on in this entry. Just check out the menu system for the game. Remember in the previous games the menu would be presented neatly, easy to navigate and fast flowing? Well, you can forget about it in this one. It's boring to look at and an absolute chore to navigate. Seems like there's a delay also when navigating. Just look at the shite state of the map system. Sorry, but I'll be referencing the previous games a lot. They're the only games we have to go on at this point in the series. But yeah, remember in the previous games how the map layout would be spread across the whole area so you can see everything. Even see certain floors of an area you're in and nicely detailing if you have searched and explored already. You can forget about that also with this game. You only see the immediate area you're in. For example, If you're in a narrow alley with only one door to go in apart from the one you came from, you'd only see that narrow bit of land on the map screen. Absolute shite. I will say this though, and give credit where it's due, how you view the files is nicely done. Just all stored in the one book, and you navigate left and right to reread files you have picked up, but it's pointless because the files you read are just as boring as the game itself. Nothing like the previous game's files that would help with adding an extra element of horror and also add a bit of story progression. I mean, I suppose it does in this as well, but the story is so shite I couldn't care less, and the horror aspect is non-existent that it seems pointless. Saying that though, there was one jump scare I got, and that was this. That was it. The one point I'll probably only ever remember about this game now. Now you can't have a Resident Evil game without enemies, so let's have a look at some of them. If you have played the previous games up to this point, then the enemies should look very familiar to you. The models you see for the enemies were directly taken from previous games, so if you notice killing that exact same zombie in another game, that'll be why. It's something I always thought was kind of cool, even now, but with how crap the gameplay is, it takes away the scary side of it. I always remembered when I was younger after watching my cousin play the first Resident Evil, thinking how terrifying it would be to see a hunter face to face, and this is the reality. Even when I played this back in the day, I thought it looked terrible. But yeah, the majority of the enemies you see in previous games are all in this one. Zombies, hunters, IVs, dogs, giant alligators, spiders, which at this point no matter what the game is will freak me out. One enemy though you'll encounter loads is Tyrant, T103 model to be exact, but most will know him better as Mr. X. Now you see, this is for me where it gets a bit over the top. Remember in Resident Evil 2 where he would pop up randomly giving the player a bit of a jump fright? Well, it seems in Resident Evil Survivor they thought it would be a good idea to plant loads of them throughout the game. It loses its great terrifying touch from the second game having loads of them pop up in this. For me, fear is knowing something is out there trying to get you, rather than having one planted in almost every room towards the end of the game. Another thing they have lost their touch on is the introduction to certain enemy types in the game. Like for example, the first time any player seen a zombie in the series from the first game, or the introduction to the hunter in the third game where he chops that zombie's head off. A great way to heighten the player's fear and anxiety, but they've just thrown it away in this one, by having loads of enemies pop up with no rhyme or reason. Pretty much all enemies you encounter are a walk in the park to take care of, apart from the dogs. Keeping their form from the previous games with their random pattern of movements, which you can imagine is an absolute bastard to try and aim at in this. I really wish I hadn't bothered playing this now, it's really that bad. Taking what was scary elements away from the previous games and changing them into this doesn't end there though. You'll always be fully equipped because your handgun has unlimited ammo. Yes, unlimited ammo in a Resident Evil game. That's one thing that made the previous game scary at points, was either having no ammo or knowing you're about to run out of ammo in a situation where you knew there was loads of enemies, so you had to strategically plan your next move to get from A to B. Like really? It's usually on-rail shooters that have unlimited ammo and that makes sense, but in this, I don't know why they decided this, but it was a shite decision. I reckon this game could have been a bit more tense if there was points where you had no ammo at all. There are other guns to collect on your playthrough, but what's the point when your pistol, which you can find upgraded versions for, has unlimited ammo anyway? Fuck this shit. And oh my god, the music in this. Or at least when there's anything playing. Absolute shite. I'm sorry, but here I go with the back referencing again. The first game had a classic soundtrack, and so did the second, constantly complementing the surrounding you were in, and definitely added a layer of horror and made the overall experience a bit more intense. Not in this though. You know, when I uploaded my last Resident Evil video, I also posted it on my Facebook where someone mentioned how short that game was, which is understandable as I mentioned in that video that they were wanting a spin-off game but didn't have enough time because of the release of the PlayStation 2 at the time, so they just decided to add on to what was the second one. This game though, Resident Evil Survivor, seems like a total cash grab to me, spending as little time and money as possible to cash in on the success of the previous games. That statement is evidence into what I'm going to talk about now, and that is the voice acting. Oh dearie dearie me, it is horrendous to listen to. It honestly sounds like they recorded the lines for this through a tin can.
Put that down, I won't harm you, I promise.
There is like a horrible metal echo sort of effect on everything that anybody says. Oh, also, remember the awkward pauses between dialogue from the first game? Well, they brought it back for this and it's unbearable.
Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Where's your brother, Lot?
Please, you have to save my brother.
At least with the first game it had a sort of charm to it, so folk let it pass. But this is another level. They done so well with the spoken dialogue in the second and third game. Well, maybe not the best, but it was a huge improvement from the first one, so what's the excuse with this one? Oh yeah, money. Let's cash in. Let's get this piece of shit out there as soon as possible. It's not even just the spoken word parts in this that are shite, even the sound effects are laughable too. Just listen to the sound effects of me crossing the bridge. It sounds like a bloody shite shag. So now that we've covered that the gameplay is shite, the enemies are shite, and don't add anything scary to the game apart from the bloody spiders, the music and voiceovers are shite. I bet you must be thinking, hey, I bet they made the story bloody brilliant to make up for all that. You're dead wrong. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know what the hell was going on back when I played this as a youngster, and I still have no idea what's going on now. I'll try and go over what I've made of it. And honestly, my apologies if there are any diehard Resident Evil Survivor fans out there, because I'm probably going to mess this one up. Oh yeah, and before I start, yes, I do realise there are branching paths, but at this point, if you've gotten this far in the video, you'll be fully aware I wasn't willing to play this a second time, or third, so here we go. Upon starting, you're greeted with a bit of on-screen text, and a bit of spoken word. One thing that really annoyed me was that the narrator was speaking far ahead from when the text was actually appearing on screen.
The only location where an outbreak occurred.
Yeah, I'm nitpicking, but it's a piece of shit, so I'm not that bothered. Made me laugh a bit as well, so fair dues. Anyway, you see a helicopter with some guy hanging onto it. It bangs into a building and then crashes. This is where your player rolls out of the burning wreckage, and it's also when you realise the player you're controlling is an absolute dipshit. Just listen to the shite he's spraffing.
Where am I? Oh! I don't remember anything.
It seems he can't remember anything, and trust me, he'll make sure you don't forget it, because he mentions this a lot. He comes to a telephone that is ringing and hears someone say the name...
Vincent!
Who is this? Vincent? Who's that?
I have no idea what the point of this was apart from getting it into the player that this guy can't remember anything. You'll eventually come to a games arcade of some kind and a cutscene will play of some guys jumping out of a helicopter with what appears to be the leader of this group saying everything needs wiped out. They look like Hunk from Resident Evil 2, but it was too dark for me to make out and I really couldn't give a shit either way. You'll enter a room and see two of the guys that you've seen jumping from the helicopter being shot. Oh, who done that? To be honest, I was more impressed and busy looking at these cool Dino Crisis posters on the wall here. You'll also see references to the Street Fighter games later on too. Anyway, this wee snide bastard was the one who was shooting, and look at the way he shuffles away from the window. But it was at this point where I felt it was my mission to complete this game. You see, up to this point, only about 15 minutes in or so, I really just wanted to turn this off and hope no one understood my cliffhanger from my previous video, but I have a dog. A little Yorkshire Terrier by the name of Vinny. I also call him Vincent, and it was at this exact moment when I heard those words.
Die, Vincent! Die!
I made it my personal mission to complete this and kick the shit out of that snide bastard, but we'll get to that in a bit. You'll later come to a room where your player will find some pictures and realise he's looking at pictures of himself and now believes he is this so-called Vincent everyone is going on about. A boy appears out of nowhere at this point and seems terrified at the sight of him. You'll eventually come to what seems to be an Umbrella lab, the only thing that ties this into any of the other previous games. Because if it didn't have any mention of Umbrella Corporation, it really wouldn't be a Resident Evil game, would it? When inside, he sees a little girl on the camera and tries to shout to see if she can hear. Of course that wouldn't work, and then he has a flashback of what looks like him and that guy who was hanging off the helicopter at the start fighting. You'll enter a room and hear a recording of what is meant to be his mum asking him to come home, but it sounds ridiculous.
Vincent, it's me, your mother.
My mother?
Vincent, please, listen to your mother. I want you to leave Umbrella. I want you to stop performing those terrible crimes and just come back home.
What's supposed to be a serious bit, I guess, is just laughable with how shitty it sounds. He then finds the girl he's seen on the camera. She explained while he strangles her that her brother sent her to wait there. Then out of nowhere, her brother comes with a baseball bat to save her, and also does the most incredible run/walk animation I've ever seen. I'm really glad there's footage to back all this up, or else you would all think I'm talking utter pish here. You realise now that they are called Lot and Lily. The brother sounds awfully like a girl, so I had to check this out online, and it turns out the boy's voice was indeed done by a woman. Guess you learn something new every day. Lot is persistent on the fact he thinks you're going to kill him and his sister, so proceeds to swing his bat constantly. At this rate, I'd leave the wee bastard behind and fend for myself. While chasing after Lot and Lily, you're led to a river which leads to their house. You find Lily in a cupboard and she is very upset and explains you need to find Lot in a factory by the ropeway. What a sentence. Bloody ropeway. Sounds like me trying to explain one of my shites after a night out. You know how it goes that ropey way? Almost like string? Fuck, what am I talking about here? Back to the story. You'll find this ropeway Lily was talking about, and it does indeed lead you to the factory. Upon entering, you'll hear Lot scream.
Lot?
You come to a walkway inside and see tons of Mr. X's and tubes, and this is where you realise this is where they're being mass produced. And what do you know? You face one here. What could have been terrifying wasn't. Just run to the other end of the walkway and unload bullets into him, and then you're done. You'll hear Lot scream again once the gate opens. When entering, you'll see he's being attacked by a hunter, which makes him fall over the edge. You have a boring encounter with one, then save him. Lot explains to the player he is in fact not this Vincent you're being led to believe, but a man named Ark Thompson. Ooh, major plot twist, I never seen this coming. And also, it wasn't him that committed all these murders, and I'm honestly falling asleep at this point. Now that's out the way, Lot says there's a railway station they can use for their escape, so Lot goes back to the house to get his sister Lily, and this now, Ark Thompson, will meet them there. And of course, it isn't a Resident Evil game without a self-destruction sequence being played, but in this game I have no idea why it's needed, but we'll go along with it anyway. And then out of nowhere, Ark Thompson says this.
That's right. At the request of my friend Leon S. Kennedy, I came here to investigate. Oh yes, I remember everything.
Oh, the classic tie-in to make it the slightest bit relevant. Absolute simpleton this knob jockey is, honestly. A cutscene then plays out which is the build up to the intro of this game, and he goes, I'm not Vincent, I'm Ark. Duh. I wonder if before this he forgot how to wipe his arse too. You then have an encounter with the leader of that group that you seen jump out of the helicopter. He also actually says it was him that done the self-destruction sequence, so I guess it makes sense somehow. He gets taken out, so you don't have to worry about him anyway. You then have a standoff with the Tyrant. He's easy to deal with though. You'll find Lot and Lily at the train and now you're good to go. The end of the game at last. Or is it? You tell them to get into the helicopter and then Tyrant comes back for one last fight, and what a shit show this is. You know I died 3 times in this game and it was only because of this fight. I couldn't take it seriously at all. He jumps about and the easiest way to beat him is to run about yourself until you have a clear aim and just blast away at him. Also, if you have your back to him, he can't harm you for some reason. With enough shots fired at him, he'll soon form into another version of himself. Ooh, freaky. He looks absolutely ridiculous with his tongue sticking out. Looks more like a happy dog than a terrifying beast. In his final form he has the ability to lift you up, but just keep running and have your back turned and he'll do absolutely hee-haw. Once he's taken care of, the 3 of yous get in the chopper for your final escape, showing a montage of the factory crumbling then eventually exploding. Finally, the game has finished. But not without another return from Tyrant though. He hangs onto the chopper and for the first time you see Ark actually use his own initiative for a change, firing a rocket that Tyrant is hanging onto, but that's not enough. He then fires another rocket to blow that son of a bitch up. The game finishes and you're greeted with the credits, along with a really intense guitar solo playing over it. My favourite part of the game, if I'm honest. Now up to this point though, if you didn't know there was multiple playthroughs to get a real idea of the story, you'd be absolutely clueless like I am now. Remember that snidey bastard from earlier who done the snide shuffle who made it personal for me involving my dog Vincent? You don't see him again after that. Also, the guy in the white suit that I'm now left to believe who was actually Vincent all along? Fuck knows. I might have missed something, but I'm not playing this again. Never mind a third time to tie it all together to get a better understanding of the story. You'll get a scorecard at the end like previous games letting you know how well you did in it. Think I done not bad considering I wasn't taking it seriously at all. Once completed you can play through again. I don't know why you would though. All the guns you got during your previous playthrough will be carried over to your new game. I'm not gonna lie, I did start a new playthrough just to go into the opposite door I did from my first playthrough and holy shit. It's like I've walked into a rave. This is bloody brilliant. Oh, who am I kidding? It'll still be a lot of bollocks, I bet. So yeah, that's what I gathered from the story. I truly believe the only reason why they added an umbrella factory and that line where he refers to Leon Kennedy from the second game is so they can get away with calling it a Resident Evil game. Thank God that's over with for now though. I hope to never play this piece of shit again in my life. As you can imagine, the game wasn't received well at all and is currently sitting with a Metacritic rating of 39. Even on its release the reviews were terrible, with some slating its gameplay mechanics with the gun, horrible pixelated graphics, and the pace of the game being that of a snail. Later on down the line they'd release another shooter called Resident Evil Survivor 2 Code Veronica. I haven't played that so I can't tell you a thing about it. The shooters didn't stop there though. In 2003 they'd release a Resident Evil game called Dead Aim, but the less said about that the better. It wouldn't be until 2007 where we'd see a proper Resident Evil shooter in the form of Umbrella Chronicles released on the Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 3. I have played this on the Wii and it was such a blast. 2 years later we would be treated to the Dark Side Chronicles which followed suit from the previous game. 2 proper on-rail Resident Evil shooters. I'd honestly suggest if you want to play a Resident Evil shooter, give these 2 games I mentioned a blast. Hopefully you won't be disappointed. I'm going to be honest and say I really did enjoy going back to play the Resident Evil games, of course apart from Survivor, which is definitely my least favourite out of them all. It's a completely different game really compared to the other ones, but hey ho, I'm glad that one's over now. I do think it's a shame that we have to finish this series that I've done on a bum note with this one, but I suppose that's just the way it is. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed these videos that I've done looking back at the Resident Evil games for the PlayStation 1. Please subscribe to my channel to be kept up to date with future content I upload, and yep, I'll see you in the next one.